is the value of a human life? That's usually posed as a rhetorical question, isn't it? What is the value of a human life? Can we assign a monetary value to a human life, to a human soul? Can we put a price on it like we can a bottle of water, or a bottle of motor oil, or a lampshade, or a fishing boat? Is that possible? Are some lives worth more than others? These are philosophical questions that people have been wondering aloud for ages. Do you remember that feeling of being a teenager? You remember what it was like when your body was new and shiny? Remember that? Remember a time before work and bills and all the responsibility, being responsible for other people? You remember that feeling? You remember what it was like having that long road of life just stretched out before you, and all the possibilities. Not knowing what they were, but just being excited for the ride. You remember that? Remember the last day of school? Remember the beginning of summer break, sleeping in, summer jobs, fireflies, fresh peaches? What about grandma's house? Slip and slides? Remember the smell of fresh cut grass? Beach trips, no responsibilities. How do you put a price on that? You remember that? How do you put a value on that? I've got a 15-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son, and they're in that time of life. And if I'm waxing too poetic, it's because I'm envious at times of them, and being in that stage and just having that whole long road of life stretched out before you and all the possibilities. Just an adventure waiting to unfurl, right? But if I could jump in a time machine and go back to them, to being 14 years old, I don't think I would, because I remember the difficulties of that time as well. I remember being 14, and a sad reminder that I'm not anymore is sometimes when I get a glimpse of the camera and I see my face up there, and I say, who the hell is that? Where did those wrinkles come from? Where did that gray hair come from? But I do remember being a 14-year-old boy. And if I could, I don't think I'd go back to being a 14-year-old boy. Because I remember the difficulties of being a 14-year-old boy. I remember the idea of trying to zero in on what is my identity? What is my personality anyway? Who am I? Where do I fit in? How can I be cool? And to this day, I still remember things that I did that made me shake my head, things that I strongly regret, things that were ill-advised, things that were reckless and dangerous, things that were just plain stupid. It was not easy being a 14-year-old boy, and that was back in 1993. But that's what being a kid is. That's what being a 14-year-old boy is, to make mistakes and hopefully to learn from them, right? Isn't that what growing up is supposed to be about? I didn't look much like Cyrus, and I think that's obvious to everybody here. We grew up in different parts of Columbia. We had different experiences. We went to different schools. We grew up under different circumstances, different times. Seems that we were both skinny little 14-year-old boys from divorced parents trying to find our way. I remember trying to straddle that line between being a child and trying to figure out what it meant and where my place was in the world, and trying to figure out how to be a teenager. Trying to figure things out. And as I said, it seems that to me that it would be infinitely more difficult to be a 14-year-old in 2023 than it was in 1993. There are just things that exist now that were unimaginable back then when I was 14. But some of the broader challenges would have been the same. Where do I fit in? How do I fit in? This would have been that wistful time of life for Cyrus in May of 2023. He had just wrapped up 8th grade. We all know what comes next, 9th grade and high school and all the craziness of that. But right now, May of 2023, it's summertime. The first week of summer. What's better than that? How do you put a price on that? It's the best time of the year for a kid. There's still a few months before he has to deal with that crazy time of 9th grade and high school. Sunday, May 28, 2023, it was Memorial Day weekend. Cyrus was fresh off middle school graduation and it was summertime. Why does a 14-year-old have a gun? This was asked multiple times by my friend, known him since I was 14, Jack Swirling. But he asked that a number of times. And I suppose he asked that as a literal question that deserved an immediate, succinct, distilled, and simple answer. That was how the question was posed, that it is a very simple question and deserves a simple answer. Maybe it's not that simple, though. Maybe it's a much broader question that we as a society will eventually have to sit down and come up with real answers to and possible solutions to. Maybe it's a question with an answer that is so complex, it has so many layers, that it's so loaded that maybe it's not something we just figure out in a day. But it does seem, as long as guns have existed, boys have been fascinated by them. Required reading when I was in elementary school was Where the Red Fern Grows. And it was all about Billy and his gun and the exploits and the adventures of 10-year-old Billy and his rifle. Or, my favorite movies back then were Tombstone and Young Guns and Predator and Terminator. Just movies about guns and violence. Boys eat it up. I did. So many movies, so much imagery, so many music videos about guns. It's just, we're in America. It's part of life, and boys eat it up. You can't even get through December without Christmas Story and Ralphie and his fascination with the Red Ryder rifle, right? It's just a fact of life. And that was all before the internet. But again, we live in America, and to take that one step further, Cyrus and I grew up in the South. And we were blessed to grow up in the South, weren't we? And guns are just a part of life, are they not? A gun leaning up in the corner when I was growing up was about as exciting as a cast iron skillet on the stove or a butcher knife in the sink. It's just part of our life. And whether that's good or bad, I'm not here to talk about that, but guns are prevalent, and boys gravitate towards guns, whether that's good or not. Was Cyrus right in having a pistol in his pocket May 28th of 2023? No. Was it legal for Cyrus to have a pistol in his pocket May 28th, 2023? No. Has anybody indicated that it was okay or legal or right? No. Did he deserve to die? Did he deserve to die? I remember my grandfather letting me practice with a little .22 rifle. I remember being 8, shooting a .22 rifle. I remember my first single shot, .410 shotgun. I was probably about 12, 13 when I got that. I remember going up to the little cabinet just off the kitchen in my grandparents' house and finding a little revolver he had there I remember taking it down, and I remember going down to the pond and shooting a few shots. I was probably about 12, and I knew I wasn't supposed to do that. And I knew I'd get in trouble if I got caught. That didn't stop me. I remember all those things. Boys do things that are ill-advised and not always smart. That's part of life, though. We hope as we grow older, we learn some of these things and we grow out of them. Did Cyrus deserve to die? When Cyrus Carmack-Belton entered that Shell gas station at 7441 Park Lane Road, about 8 p.m., May 28, 2023, he had no way of knowing that he'd be dead in about 10 minutes. You see him enter the gas station. He is immediately asked to take his book bag off. A very fair request, and he complies immediately. He's not rude during the encounter. He does as he's asked to do. We see Alice check the facial recognition database once he comes in. We heard about the facial recognition database they employ at the Shell gas station. And then she went about her business, or pretended to act busy, while keeping an eye on Cyrus as he walked up and down the aisles. At some point she ducks her head into the office where Rick is. What, if anything, she said to him is unknown. We don't know. But Alice and Andy continued to watch Cyrus as he walks up and down the aisles. Eventually he goes to where the water bottles are. He had to know he was being watched, right? I mean, I don't think Alice was making it unknown, or she wasn't really disguising what she was doing. He took 4 bottles of water out, put 4 bottles of water back in. He's caught on camera from several different angles doing so. And cameras do not lie. Cameras do not make mistakes. It would have taken about 17 seconds to watch him at that water cooler if Rick Chow had decided to do that. About 17 seconds of his time. 17 seconds to confirm that he took nothing. Failure of Rick Chow to do this will cost Cyrus his life. Thousands and thousands of dollars of technology at Rick Chow's fingertips, and he chooses to act in anger. Cyrus would be a rising senior if he was still alive, entering his 12th grade year of high school. If Rick Chow had taken about 17 minutes to review the footage. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. As Cyrus turned from the water cooler, Alice and Andy began asking him if he put a bottle of water in his pocket. $1, 114 pounds, 130 yards, 21 grams. Fight or flight. You've heard that term. It's a physiological reaction, right? It's ingrained in us since we were cavemen, I guess, basically. And it is an instinct. It's a reaction that occurs in situations where there is a threat. Okay. If Cyrus is a tough guy, right? If Cyrus is a thug, right? If Cyrus is a gunslinger, right? If he is that guy, okay? If he's that guy, now is the time you'd see it. Now's the time he'd pull that pistol out, point it, if he was that guy, right? He's not that guy. He's a child. He doesn't pull out his pistol. He doesn't cuss or disrespect anyone. He collects his backpack drops his head, and he walks out. If he was a fighter, now would be the chance for him to confront anybody. If he ever intended to use the gun, it would have been right here. But this is the moment where cool heads should prevail. Cool reflection should be what happened here. Reflection should have occurred. This is when adults should act like adults. This could have been it. He could have walked off. He would be a kid looking forward to senior year in high school. You have a mother and a father who would still have their little boy. $1, 114 pounds, 17 seconds, 1 second, 21 grams. An entire lifetime ahead, unknown potential, success, failure, redemption, decisions. We know the decision Rick Chow made. It's etched in time now. It plays back like a bad movie you've seen before. You already know the ending. He did what he did, and that's why we're all here today. Let him go. Just let him go. We don't need to be here today. Let the boy go. What have you got to lose? What is the value of human life? As of May 28, 2023, Rick Chow had owned and operated that gas station for over 10 years. This was not his first day on the job. Why not call 911? It takes 1 second. Andy said so himself. It takes 1 second to call 911. Better yet, why don't we review the videotape? If we think the boy took something, why don't we look at that videotape? Because then we'd realize we don't even need to call 911. He never did anything. We would have learned that immediately. All this at your fingertips. Instead, you choose to act in anger. You choose to make split-second decisions. And you're dead wrong. For argument's sake, though, let's say he had committed the abominable crime of stealing a $1 bottle of water. Let's say he did that, okay? Well, you remember the wall of shame? You remember the testimony about all the pictures all over the store of various people who had been suspected of shoplifting, and what we do at the Shell gas station is we take their picture because we have all these cameras that we can get all these pictures from, and then we put it up on the wall of shame. And that's what we do. We shame them. But also if they come back in, we can confront them. Why don't we put this little boy's picture up there then? I mean, if he stole water, let's just do that. That would have been a better option, right? Or we get all these pictures, let's send them into law enforcement. Looking for this guy, and by the way, we know exactly what he was wearing. And by the way, he walked that way down this dead-end road. Shouldn't be too hard for you guys to solve. Anything would have been better than this. He chose to chase down an 8th grader. The boy was so terrified that he ran out of his shoe and continued running. The boy was so terrified, he's losing clothing. He drops his phone. He drops his mother's phone. But he continues running. Wouldn't that have been even another great opportunity for them to stop? Listen, we've scared this little boy so bad he's come out of his shoe. Let's stop the insanity right here. Let's turn around. Let's take our butts back to the Shell gas station. What are we even doing anyway? Why are we doing this? But no, they continue tracking him, chasing the boy down. And then he takes that hard fall, hits the ground. What about right then? Wouldn't that have been a good time to be like, we're scaring this boy so bad that he's run out of his shoes, he's lost his cell phones, and now he's hurt himself. We've gone too far. We've gone too far. But no. 130 yards, 114 pounds, 390 feet, 1 second, 17 seconds, 21 grams. Why in God's name are 2 grown men, one armed, chasing a child, because that's what he is, 130 yards? Why in God's name? Devontae Bryant, he had to hit the brakes because he didn't want to hit him. He'll come running out in front of him on Springtree. Dead set on catching that boy. He had to put the brakes on. He says he thought it was the police. I said, well, why'd you think that? He said, because one of the guys had a pistol. And they were chasing that boy. I thought that was the police. And so that would have been what Cyrus saw too. He doesn't know why these men are chasing him to begin with, why they're yelling at him. And now he sees one of them has a gun. And he's wondering, why are these people chasing me? What are they going to do to me? And he's running. And Devontae Bryant said he didn't have anything in his hand. Lori Carson pulled up too. Remember her? That's her in that BMW. A grandmother. She recognized immediately Cyrus was a child. She said he looked frightened. He looked scared. He said it looked like he needed help. He said he didn't have anything in his hand. Kennedy, Jasmine Broadwater, they saw him too. He didn't have anything in his hand. All of them had different angles to observe. None of them knew Cyrus. But they were all very clear. The boy had nothing in his hand. He had a backpack over his left shoulder, which we can see in the video, trying to hold his pants up while he ran from these men. But he had nothing in his hand. What does 130 yards look like? Well, looks like this. It's a long distance. It's too damn long. It's 130 yards too long. 114 pounds, 1 second, $1, 21 grams. Cyrus was shot in his back as he ran away from Rick Chow and Andy Chow. He entered his lower back, just to the right of his backbone. It traveled upwards, you see. It went through his lung, you see. It entered the right ventricle of his heart. It came to rest there. And that trajectory tells us he was trying to get away to the very end, trying to run from danger. He died scared. He died bleeding to death. Rick Chow's face being the last one he saw. He died surrounded by strangers. He died scared on the side of a road in nowhere America. He died young. He died because of Rick Chow. Shot in the back. Today Rick Chow says, well, guys, I had to do it. I had to kill that boy. I had to chase him down, and I just had to shoot him. He says his son yelled gun, and he had to shoot. He tells you he was justified in doing it. And he says, well, if you're wondering why I shot and killed a child in the back, it's because of the doctrine of defense of others. That's what he says to you today. And he was dead wrong on May 28, 2023, and he's dead wrong today. Okay. So, what is the law of defense of others? There are 4 elements that the state has to disprove one of them, okay? But these are what would get you a charge and find that you would be justified in killing somebody based on the law of defense of others. If any of these are disproven, any one of them are disproven by the state, then he does not get that legal justification for killing. You understand? If you find any of these to not fit for him, he does not get the defense of others. Number 1, okay? I want to be clear. He fails right off the bat. What is the number 1 element of defense of others? The very first one, that he fails miserably. Rick Chow and Andy Chow both must be without fault for bringing on the difficulty. Y'all remember those questions I asked Andy? And by the way, the other thing y'all get to consider is credibility of witnesses. Y'all seen people lie before. Y'all seen people tell half-truths. Y'all seen people waver before in questions they didn't really want to answer. Y'all seen that before in life. Y'all have a chance to sit back there and talk about whether y'all found Andy to be a credible witness or not. But one thing I asked him is, Andy, Cyrus is still alive if y'all stay in the gas station, right? He said, yeah, you're right. But then they decided to ramp it up. They brought this difficulty on, okay? One of his lawyers said, well, you know, Cyrus would be alive if he didn't have a gun. And I said, you would never have known he had a gun, would you? if you just kept your butt in the shell station, kept doing the work you were doing. Stay behind the cash register. And Rick, stay back in the, what do you call it, your surveillance room back there. Why don't you just stay back there? Why are we running 130 yards off our property? Even after he loses his shoes and his cell phone, why aren't we just stopping on the property? If we need to see which direction he goes in, well, we see him running up that straight road, and we know it's a dead end, and we got all these pictures of him. Now we got his cell phone, we got his shoe, we got all these pictures of him, we got his clothing. Cell phone, shoe. Why do we bring on the difficulty when we don't have to? But right off the bat, defense of others fails. Prong number one. A grown man with decades of experience chose to turn suspicion into pursuit and pursuit into gunfire. We fail immediately. But if we were to consider going on, he fails all four of them. Let me just walk you through it just to be clear. But if any one of them fail, he does not get that defense. But number two, Rick Chow must be under the belief or have a good faith belief that Andy Chow was in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury, harm. We saw that a fall and the after effects of it, it was such a violent fall that it led to those wounds to his shin. He goes face down into the ground with what various witnesses said. And then marker AA right there, that would be the laser pointer, the flashlight we heard so much about. But that is an interesting marker because you know what that tells us? A couple things really. It tells us where Cyrus fell and hit the ground, but it also, along with those wounds to his legs, shows us how violent of a fall it was. That would be where he hit the ground, and the only way this works is if his gun comes out of his hoodie, hits the ground so violently it dislodges the flashlight, and that's where it came to rest. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a 14-year-old boy, and you know you're not supposed to have that gun, and you're being chased by people, and it spills out, the very first thing you're going to do is pick it up and continue running, which is exactly what Cyrus Carmack-Belton did. He was trying to get away. But as you see right there, that would be where he fell. And we know he continued running because his body is found past those two poles. But what is further up towards where his body came to rest? AB right there is that shell casing. That is approximately where Rick Chow stood when he fired the weapon. So even after we see where Cyrus fell, Rick Chow is still advancing towards him, still moving towards where he ultimately came to die. I don't know how you describe being in fear of this boy and being terrified of him, but even after he falls and you supposedly become aware of a gun that spills out of his pocket, you continue to advance towards him. How do you say now that you were in fear of him? And would a reasonably prudent person have done this? Would a reasonably prudent person have even left the shell station? The answer is no. He fails 2, and he fails 3. So finally, Andy Chow must be shown to have had no other probable way to avoid the danger of death or serious bodily injury than to act the way he did. Okay? I don't understand how you can ever say I'm retreating when you were the one chasing somebody, chasing them off your property, chasing them 130 yards down a road that you don't belong on. How do you then say I was retreating? No, you are advancing. You were the one bringing on this difficulty. You started it and you're the one who continues it. Rick Chow fails all 4 prongs of defense of others, and he fails spectacularly. We only have to prove one. Number 1, he fails right off the bat. I submit to you, he fails all 4. This would be a shot by now. You know, we spent a lot of time, I know it's been boring at times, trying to orient you guys with the landscape, but it is important, really, to kind of have a general familiarity with this area we're talking about. But if we're looking at this picture, which is an evidence, y'all seen those poles right there a number of times. That's kind of a good marker. You've seen this drainage ditch right here on the bottom where his backpack was found. That's another good marker. Behind us would be the Shell gas station at Park Lane Road, and forward is just the dead end. This would be approximately where that laser flashlight attachment would be found. And again, that's where reason tells us that Cyrus fell. And the gun apparently hit the ground hard enough to detach the laser flashlight. That's where that was found. A little bit further up again, past where he fell, that means Rick Chow is still advancing past where that boy fell and continues chasing him with his gun. That's where the casing's found, right there, with the green arrow. Behind those trees, there's Bradford Bears right there. That is where, we know from the body camera, that's where Cyrus comes to rest. That's where he dies. I mean, just on the side of the road, just nowhere, South Carolina. Shot on the side of the road like a dog. Surrounded by strangers. Mother not there. Grandma not there. Scared and alone. Murder is, in South Carolina, statutorily defined as killing of another person with malice aforethought. Okay? What is malice aforethought? The judge is going to define malice for you. This is malice. You see this right here? Y'all see that? Look at it. This is what malice looks like right here. It's hatred, ill will, or hostility. We know how Rick Chow feels about shoplifters. Okay? He has devoted a large amount of space in his store to advertise shoplifters and identify shoplifters. He doesn't like them. Malice is ill will or hostility towards another person. It's the intentional doing of a wrongful act without just cause or excuse, and with an intent to inflict an injury under circumstances the law will infer an evil intent. When does malice need to form, and when does it need to exist in the mind of Rick Chow? The judge will tell you it does not, malice aforethought does not require that malice exists for any particular time before the act is committed, but it must exist in the mind of the defendant just before and at the time of the shooting. Okay? Therefore, there must be a combination of the evil intent, the prior intent, i.e. chasing a boy up the road with a gun at your side, and the act, shooting. How can malice be shown? There are 2 types of ways it can be shown. It can be expressed or it can be inferred. They're not different, but just the way they may be shown. Express malice is shown when a person speaks words which express hatred or ill will for another, or when the person prepared beforehand to do the act which was later accomplished. Malice can be inferred from conduct showing a total disregard for human life. This is malice right here. Y'all see malice? This is what malice looks like. Shot to the back tells the story better than any witness ever could. The state must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. This is the standard of every criminal case from here to Seattle, all across the U.S. The state must prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. What does that mean? Does it mean beyond all doubt? Does the state have to prove a case that leaves everyone saying, I have no doubt about anything anymore? No. It means that if you have a doubt that is reasonable, whether he's guilty or not, do you have a doubt that he's guilty? If you do, is it reasonable? Is it based on logic? If it is, then you should find him not guilty. That's just the law. That's how it's always been. But if your doubt as to whether or not he did what he did is not reasonable, or your doubt is not really logical, you must find him guilty. Does that mean you have to be 100% certain about everything regarding this case? It does not. The judge will tell you there are very few things in this world we know with absolute certainty, and in criminal cases, the law does not require proof that overcomes every possible doubt. He's going to say, if based on your consideration of evidence, you are firmly convinced. I put that in bold because to me, it's the best way to understand beyond a reasonable doubt. When you go back there and y'all are talking about issues or what you remember about specifics of the case, just ask yourself, are we firmly convinced? Let's all take a poll. Are we firmly convinced of his guilt? And if everybody raises their hand, then you find him guilty. That is how you determine whether or not there's reasonable doubt or whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Are we all firmly convinced? Remember those two words. He's going to say it twice when he reads those instructions to you. Firmly convinced. So when y'all get back there and y'all say, what was reasonable doubt again? You say, well, I remember Dale saying firmly convinced. That was what we have to decide. Are we firmly convinced? Cyrus will forever be 14 years old. It'll always be the beginning of summer. Ninth grade in high school, they'll never come. He won't get the chance to catch the eye of a pretty girl. He won't get to feel rejection either. He won't be at the prom with his classmates. He won't have a chance to be cool or to take that winning shot. He won't have the opportunity to be a loser. He'll never get the chance to figure things out. He'll never feel his grandmother's kiss on his forehead. He won't get to drink that beer when he turns 21. He'll never catch snowflakes on his tongue again. He won't get to feel the sun on his face that first warm day of spring. He'll never get to find his way in this world that can be so cruel, but so beautiful. He won't be like this 14-year-old boy and look in the mirror and see these wrinkles and this gray hair that just kind of came out of nowhere and be able to trace them and think back of the memories and the experiences behind them. He'll forever be 14, alone and scared. running up that road, trying to get somewhere safe, but never making it. The solicitor, Stephanie, and Weston and I, we walked that stretch of road on Spring Tree a dozen times or more. The air, it just feels heavier. The energy it's off. The tragedy of a life cut short is just burned into the surroundings. I can't explain it. And the question isn't, why does a 14-year-old have a gun? It's, why is an armed 57-year-old man chasing a boy 130 yards, knowing how scared he is, and then shooting him in the back? You know this is wrong. You know it's wrong. They were dead wrong about that water. Mr. Chow, Rick Chow, is dead wrong about this. 14, 130 yards, $1, 1 second, 21 grams. In the early 1900s, there was a doctor. He thought he could measure the weight of a human soul. He thought it was possible to determine the physical weight of a human soul. He measured 6 patients just before and then right after death. And in one of them, he found something interesting. One of the patients, he determined there was a difference of 21 grams. And so he determined, based on that experience, that the human soul weighed 21 grams. 1 out of 6, very small sample size, and it wasn't well documented, but still, it became a popular concept that the human soul weighs 21 grams. We know that's silly today in 2026. What does our spirit weigh? Does it weigh 21 grams? No, we know that's silly. Just like we know a human life, there's no value you can put on it. It's worth way more than silver and gold. It's worth way more than this. You know it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a decision to make. I thank you for your time and attention this last week and then today. I thank you. There is only one verdict here that speaks the truth. There is only one verdict that addresses what this man did and what this man took away. One verdict. That verdict is guilty. That's what I ask you to do. Find Rick Chow guilty of unjustly taking Cyrus Carmack-Belton's life. Find him guilty. That is the only verdict that speaks the truth and speaks to the evidence in this case. Thank you.